One way or another, this government or a future government is going to find a way of pushing through a digital ID in the UK. And I can say that with some degree of confidence because I can look back at history and what has happened, what people are saying now, and what is likely to happen in the future. What I don't like and what I feel compelled to talk to you about in this video is the way that I feel you are being sold different ideas and excuses and reasons and wherefores as to why this should happen. The latest example is with regard to Keir Starmer's rather bizarre deal that's been even more bizarrely celebrated with France, a one-in, one-out deal, which I have huge problems with, but I'll tell you about that in the second half of the video. But the reason that I say I believe they are trying to sell you the idea of this digital ID linked to immigration is because of articles like this one from Sky News. Digital ID cards would help deter migrants from heading to the UK, according to Labour peer Harriet Harman, which I don't agree with, by the way. I don't think that will deter them in the slightest. If they are willing to risk their life crossing the channel, breaking the law by doing so, only to then rock up in the UK with nothing, literally nothing, because reportedly they throw their passports or any ID documents either overboard or they just don't bring them with them, and turn up in the UK with absolutely nothing, they are either genuinely an asylum seeker and perhaps we should help, which I say in all my videos, or they're an economic migrant and they're coming here to work illegally and they really don't care about our laws and they really don't care about the digital ID or anything else that we've got in store to try to keep track of them or deter them from working. I don't really know how that would deter them from working because if they are going to work illegally, they are hardly going to be deterred by the requirement in the UK to have a digital ID. Because if they come here and claim asylum, then they are not supposed to be working in the first place. So if they are working when they're not supposed to be working, I really don't see how a digital ID is going to deter them in the slightest. But the article goes on and says the government should introduce digital identity cards to deter migrants coming to the UK illegally. So presumably they would issue them with a digital ID card, which doubtless many of them would just throw away and would mean absolutely nothing whatsoever, only it would cost the taxpayer additional money. A point I'll come back to and prove in just a moment. But the article goes on. Now it's trying to sell you the idea. It says that it should not be seen as a way of stopping people from doing things, although it is important to stop people from working illegally, which is probably the only thing that I don't think it will do, as it happens, but it will also be used to check people's eligibility to vote so they don't have to go through the difficulties of registering to vote and so on and so forth. Now, whether all that works or not is anybody's guess, but I can go back and tell you a few other times that this has been attempted. Firstly, the first example by Labour government in 2006 with the Identity Cards Act. Some of you may remember, set up by the Labour government of much debate, which was not altogether a great success in that it didn't last more than a few years. And when setting up this scheme, Labour said that it would be a mandatory biometric ID card linked to national insurance numbers and the ID system, aiming to combat fraud and terrorism, illegal migration, involve fingerprints, facial scans, iris data for millions of citizens. Obviously, this caused a massive backlash over privacy invasions, a big brother surveillance state fear, and ultimately a cancellation by the coalition government that came along in 2010. Only around 15,000 cards were issued under this scheme before the database was destroyed, but not before it had cost the taxpayer something in the region of £4.5 to £5.5 billion, depending where you take the figures from. You can see the subsequent legislation here which repealed that act. This is the Identity Documents Act 2010. And interestingly, at the report stage, a Labour amendment to pay compensation to people who'd already paid the charge to purchase the card was agreed to be paid out. So Labour set it up, and Labour set it to reimburse those people that had paid money for those cards, but not before it had cost £4.5 to £5.8 billion. That's not the only example. You might remember gov.uk Verify, although you may struggle to recognise it with the change in the logo at the top there. Interesting side story here. I've already had one or two people send me websites that are set up to mimic the new government website, to say this is the new initiative by the government, crypto scams, inviting them to put money into crypto things and such like. mimicking the new government website. So bravo, government, with the new website that's already been copied by fraudsters and scam artists who are jumping on the bandwagon and taking the opportunity with both hands whilst people are a little bit vulnerable, getting used to the new website, promising them that this is the new government initiative, encouraging you to invest in this government-backed crypto scam. Obviously, it's not a real thing. Don't look for it. It's not real. Don't invest your money in those things that look like the government website. I severely hope the government will never set up something encouraging you to invest in something like that. But we digress. You may remember the gov.uk Verify, which is now closed. This was from 2016, a federated identity assurance platform to enable access to an online government service, including tax benefits, third-party verifiers, and so on. The uptake was dismal, with only 20 to 25% of users successfully verifying identities because of usability barriers, non-digital natives, and not before, again, it cost over £220 million and had what they referred to as a fragmented departmental support and technical issue failure. It was phased out eventually in 2024 after being deemed to be ineffective. The broader impact, of course, this is a cautionary tale for digital ID in that it not only underscores the problems with trust, accessibility, usability, don't blame the user, which is something as someone who's one of my first businesses was building websites for people, and one of the common things was don't blame the user. If the user said there's a problem with using the thing, it's not the user's fault. It's your fault for not anticipating the difficulty the user would have with the problem. And so this is exactly on a massive, monumental scale, millions and millions of users trying to use this thing and just failing. Not only that, we now have the latest initiative, which is the gov.uk One login, which is still live. Key failures for this system? Well, one thereof, ready, set, go. The government lost the Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework certification, and the credibility went through the floor. You can see from this article here on Bramble Hub, the credibility of the UK government's flagship digital identity system, gov.uk One login, has come under renewed scrutiny after it lost its certification under the Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework. The loss of the certification occurred when iProve, the supplier responsible for the One login's biometric authentication, allowed its own compliance to lapse. It's a bit like not renewing your domain name, only much worse. As a result, One login was automatically removed from the official register of the accredited digital identity services, raising questions about its suitability for critical public services. So just to recap, this is a ongoing government digital ID login system called One login that lost its own Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework certification. But it gets worse. I'll link this article below so you can read it for yourself. This was only the latest setback because the Cabinet Office and National Cybersecurity Centre also repeatedly warned of serious data protection failings and severe shortcomings in information security, with risks including data breaches and identity theft. It'd be a good time for one of my sponsors now. This is not a sponsored video, but check out Incogni if you want to check it out with the discount in the description below. Internal whistleblowers highlighted unresolved vulnerabilities, including inadequate risk assessments, insufficient security personnel, and insecure admin practices. Security assessments revealed that the privileged access to the One login could be compromised without detection, exposing sensitive personal data and system codes to potential attackers. Despite claims of improvement, the system still only meets 21 out of the 39 outcomes of the cyber assessment framework, far short of full compliance for critical national service. Are you worried about digital and national identity yet? I think you should be. I spoke with much criticism, not my criticism, people criticizing me, when I talked about the system in China, where they have implemented digital ID on a level you cannot imagine. I am talking with no level of exaggeration, buying a single stick of celery or a spring onion on the street from a street vendor, using your phone, scanning the thing, linked to your app, WeChat, and your own digital ID. Scary? Yes, to a degree, but one thing I can tell you is it does keep people in check, and they do run it very efficiently, which is more than I really think I could say for this government here. Judging by the past record, I really don't have confidence that this is going to work. And we're not done yet. Let's talk about e-visas. So anybody here on a spouse visa, visitor visa, student visa, or even indefinite leave to remain, that's when you can live here permanently, they forced everybody to move on to an e-visa. So it's easier. So everybody can know where they are digitally and there's no problems with that. At least until, as it's reported by The Guardian here, UK government agencies themselves were not accepting e-visas as ID from job applicants. This is one of the government's own departments not accepting its own system for e-visas by way of identification. And that's not the only example. Whilst the talk of e-gates and e-visas and everything else is all fantastic when you think you can just take something and scan and walk through a gate at customs at the airport, for example, what about May 2024 when there was a huge network issue causing a crash of the system, causing hours and hours of delays because they had to do manual checks because none of this stuff worked anymore, and then suddenly when they put a system, it's a bit like the self-checkouts. If the whole of the supermarket is self-checkouts and it goes down and they only have 2 staff on hand at any one time at that area of the shop, how are they going to get everyone through the self-checkouts? It's a bit like that, only much worse at an airport going through security. And if that wasn't bad enough, remember the COVID track and trace vaccine passport app that they said people must enter into the thing if they have had the disease and therefore it will notify everybody else and restrict them from access to certain places. Not a huge uptake with that. Key failures plagued with technical glitches, low uptake, of course, because of privacy fears and ultimately people not wanting to snitch on themselves and say that they've got the disease and therefore shouldn't be going anywhere near anybody else. As to the costs of the implementation of this little doozy for COVID, whilst it was circulated that £37 billion was spent, that was actually, as I understand it, the initial budget. As was checked out by Full Fact here, the approximate spend in the end, according to the National Audit Office, was just a measly £25.7 billion that had actually been spent on the entire test and trace programme, with a lifetime cost of £29.3 billion. And worse still, in a written answer to the parliamentary question in January 2021, the Health Minister, then Lord Bethell, set out the forecast for the total cost of the setup, running and standby, etc. of the Nightingale hospitals, said that they would reach around 532 million over those years. But following on from that, a report by the Huffington Post said that following Freedom of Information requests showed these Nightingale hospitals had treated 272 inpatients up till January 2021. But as for the second half of the video and whether the one-in, one-out migrant thing is really going to work, don't just take my word for it. Take the word of former Director General of Border Force, Tony Smith, talking to GB News here. Have a listen to what he has to say.
Martin, can you just help me dispel this myth about Brexit, please? Because I worked in the Home Office for many years when we were in the EU, and we never sent any asylum seekers back to France under the Dublin Convention, under any version. I can say that with authority, but I keep getting beaten up by people saying, oh, no, I've been all right, Mr. Macron, you know, if we were back in the EU and US, it's nonsense, Martin. Nonsense. They never accepted asylum. So in that respect, Starmer's right. It's groundbreaking, actually, to be able to even return the view that they are going to return, because they've never accepted it. So I just really want to kill that one off. And if you can help me do that, that will be a big achievement, because it is nonsense. As for the deal, you've already covered it. It's not even up and running yet. We don't know when it's going to start. It needs authority from the EU, lots of noises from the Commission, other member states, people over there saying we're not happy that he should have done this, he's not got the authority. So I don't know how long that's going to take to clear the decks on his side before we finally get there. And then it's only going to be a maximum 2,500, 2,600 a year, isn't it, Martin, compared with 44,000 inbound. So I don't think the smugglers and the migrants are quaking in their boots in Calais.
And that just about sums it up. And that's exactly what I've been saying. If it's only 2,500 that are going to be actually returned, but even then we're going to have to take an equal number back through legal asylum routes, I personally think that is only going to serve to legalise the migrants that are in France, that they want us to take, that say that they have family connections here or a legitimate reason to come here. So it is a net zero return rate, and it isn't even signed off by anyone else in Europe yet, so it might be vetoed anyway. as he says here, he doesn't have the authority to do that or agree that. And so this may not happen anyway. So I think it is all noise, and I think it is just to sell you the idea all the way along that the migration is good and that we should do this thing and that the ID cards are a good idea. That's what I think, and mark my words, they will try again. They will keep pushing, spending your money to do it, and I have to air my views about that. So slightly opinionated video from my main channel here, but I felt this was worth bringing to you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please do like the video and subscribe. That helps my channel grow. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.